This is the Bartholomew Town Podcast.
Hey, everybody. Welcome into another edition of Rhode Island's podcast of record, BTOWN. It's Bill Bartholomew here with you for another round of the pod. And one of my favorite elements of the show, and from what I hear from you out there as well, one of yours, these one-on-one interviews with members of the Rhode Island media, and who better to do so than the one and only Amanda Pitts of ABC6. Now, this was a fun conversation. Honestly, this thing probably could have gone on a lot longer than the podcast episode you're about to hear. Stepping into the world of Amanda Pitts over at WLNE ABC6, which is the number 3 television station in the market, and they own it, man. They know who they are, they know the stories they want to tell, and they deliver them in a very specific way using the resources that they have. And as someone who has, just passion for those who are, the scrappier sort of, make the most of the material that you have in front of you from that artistic lens, this station is doing things that no one else in the market is doing, in spite of the fact that they are in that number 3 position. They're still obviously a highly relevant news media outlet. I'm not suggesting that nobody's watching or anything like that, but they're not Channel 10, they're not Channel 12, and they found a way to convey their message in a very specific manner. And Amanda Pitts is really on the front lines of that. She's someone, I loved her reporting style because it feels like somebody that you'd actually want to hang out with, somebody that you'd want to get information from, competent, but also compassionate, and someone who is able to really, break facts down into a way that are impactful and relevant to the conversation at hand without necessarily trying to convey some sort of overarching expertise on a matter. In other words, authentic curiosity on her part. So I really love her reporting. I really love the work she does. So we get into that today. We also get into what it's like to work for kind of a smaller TV station here in this market, a top 50 market. And then something that has been really coming to life in the press conferences around COVID-19 and in other things that we've seen over the last year. The different experience that a female reporter has than a male reporter. It does play itself out on a regular basis. I sit there and I see it. So we get into that. By the way, Amanda Pitts, a singer, and I believe that impacts her performance quite a bit. And as you know, I'm a big fan of those who make the transition from arts into media. I think it's a natural progression that more people should do. So Amanda Pitts exemplifies that. So we hear this is a fun conversation. I mean, could use this intro to tell you everything that happened. I won't do that. That would be the antithesis of good reporting. Instead, I will just simply get out of my own way and remind you that there are a few ways that you can support the independent journalism, analysis, opinion, and entertainment that BTOWN has become known for. Number 1, you can just share this episode on social media or text it over to your friend or talk about it. That sort of organic way, that's how we've been building this thing. I don't spend any money on advertising or any of that nonsense. This is all word of mouth. It's all been organic grassroots from day one. And that's how we've built this audience over here. Number 2, you can go ahead and subscribe where you're listening right now. Let's say you're on Apple Podcasts, hit that subscribe button. You know what I mean? If you don't want to listen to an episode, whatever. But it does help to have more subscribers in the long run. Number 3, if you want to go a step further, for as little as $3 per month, you may help to support the program by becoming a BTOWN insider over on patreon.com/BartholomewTown. If you go up to that $10 per month level, you'll even get exclusive monthly content, including rants from me and other people here in this market that, you may not want to miss, or maybe you do want to miss. I'm not sure. It does seem like they are being enjoyed and consumed by those folks who are at that $10 level. That's patreon.com/BartholomewTown. Also, remember to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Bill Bartholomew, and go ahead and join the Bartholomew Town Podcast Facebook group for daily digital content. All right, let's get to it. Amanda Pitts, ABC6 WLNE, here on Rhode Island's podcast of record, BTOWN. ABC6. Here we are now, 270 something episodes into this podcast. And I realized that we had never had an ambassador from the ABC6 world. Now, I guess we've had former ABC6 people, certainly Parker Gavigan, but more than anything, Jim Hummel comes to mind. I mean, he really put that station on the map in a new way. I remember the great switchover in my childhood when it was CBS 6 and ABC 6, and then they switched networks. Everyone got confused about where to go for Price is Right. Everyone was all messed up. But today, ABC 6 is really interesting because, you know, you sort of own your position in the market. You know, I see ABC 6. Well, that's tough. That's like a phonetic. Yeah. I see you at events that nobody else is at. You know what I mean? And it's fun when we've talked about this sometimes, being like, you know, I'm a one-person band, or when I'm doing TV stuff with PBS, maybe 2 or 3 of us. But, you know, that you're nimble. You can kind of adapt when, you know, 10 and 12, they've got like a zillion people. You know, there's the 15 trucks pulling in, and everyone's got like muscles, like lugging cameras, and it's like this huge like competition to like, you know, 12 says they're number 1 in ratings, and 10 says they're number 1 in ratings. No one even cares. You know what I mean? And ABC 6 is right there just telling stories.
Yeah.
Is that fairly accurate, or just sort of my own dream?
No, that's 100% accurate.
There's like
focus on ourselves and our storytelling. And yeah, there are times when it is intimidating though, when 10 and 12 have 3-4 person crews, all these trucks, and it's just me and Paul Duddy and our little camera.
Yeah. And his orange sweatshirt out there, you know, his signature uniform. I like that though. You know, I'm someone who I like the scrappiness. You know, I get why the other networks, people might say, "Oh, isn't that awesome?" You know, there's like 15 different people involved in this, but there's something, I don't know, that nimble storyteller. There's just something really magical about that. You know, I haven't had television since 2006, so I can't say I've watched an ABC 6 newscast since at least 2005. But the same for the other networks as well. But I can follow your work in a way that just seems more like less scripted and less like corporate. I don't know. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I can't speak for the other stations because I've only worked at 6. But
Yeah.
I like at 6, there's not a whole lot of, I would say, overhead. Like our news director, Dave Jones, is really awesome. He's fairly new as our news director, and he kind of just lets us do what we want, and he trusts us in our storytelling. And obviously we have people checking our scripts, but we're pretty independent in that way, where I'm just sort of sent out the door on a story, and they trust me to gather elements and put it together. And yeah, so I like that. And I like being an MMJ, honestly. The one-man band, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Shooting stuff myself and getting to edit it and write it all. I really like that. I know that there are perks to having a team work on stuff, but for me, I have control issues, you know.
I totally agree. I know. I couldn't imagine if there was like a producer for the podcast and somebody else was like deciding.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I could never let that go. I wouldn't want to do it anymore, you know?
Yeah, no, I love having the reins on my stories and being able to shoot stuff. And when I do get Paul Duddy as my photographer, he knows the shots I want. And so it's nice to work with him, but it is nice to go out and shoot stuff just by myself and be alone out there.
Where did you get your start in broadcast? Are you a native Rhode Islander or New Englander?
Yeah, it's sort of, I never know what to say when people ask me that, because I was born in Taunton. So I'm from Southern Mass, but I moved to Rhode Island when I was 6. So I grew up here. I graduated from East Providence High School. I went to Bristol Warren for elementary, middle school. I moved around a lot with my mom. So I'm from this area. I like to say I'm from Rhode Island, even though it's kind of not true.
Yeah, I mean, Taunton is sort of like the southeastern Mass, you know, it's the same thing, you know, it's the same thing. It's like, you know, I used to hear, I can't remember which radio station it was. Maybe it was 93.3 WSNE, and they would say Taunton, Providence. And I always thought they were saying, when I was like in second grade, that like the staff was taught how to do radio in Providence. You know what I mean? That was my first interaction with the municipality of Taunton.
Yep.
But do you feel like you're able to bring a specific perspective because you grew up in southeastern Mass, or have that connection that is unique? You know, I certainly feel that way having grown up in South County, Rhode Island. You know what I mean? Because it's like, you know, the back roads, you know, the nuances from one part of Taunton to the next, etc.
Definitely. Yeah. And especially because this is such a small town, everyone reaches out to you. They're like, oh, I know someone on the news. And so you get a lot of sources in that way, which I love for sure.
Totally.
And knowing how to pronounce the towns when there's new people, I always help them with that.
Yeah, you can always tell someone's new to the market or just doesn't care when you hear them talk about like South Kingston, you know, Kingstown, you know, Charleston. It's really interesting how those little details reveal like how well connected you are to the people you're serving, I guess.
And I feel like I'm more passionate about the stories because I'm from here, because they really do matter to me and the people who live here, because I know the people who live here. You know, it's my family, it's my friends. Where in my other market, my last market was in upstate New York. I didn't really have that connection. I was just sort of going through the motions and doing my job, but I didn't really care as much.
Which market was that?
Binghamton.
Binghamton. Wow.
A lot of people start there.
Fascinating. Yeah, that is one of the only cities that I've ever like escaped from. I used to be a soccer referee, and I would travel around to all these different tournaments and stuff. And it was actually like the U.S. Men's Amateur Open, like a huge thing. And I just had a meltdown. I don't know what happened. You know, I don't have meltdowns really anymore, but I got to Binghamton. We were driving around. I think we went to some Applebee's or something, and it just like clicked me. I was like, I need to leave. I went to the bus station and slept on the floor, and then took a bus out of there, blew off the tournament, totally out of character.
Applebee's will do that to you.
Applebee's will do that in Binghamton. Tough combo. What's it like out there? That's a fairly conservative part of the world.
It was very conservative, but Binghamton itself was a nice like little college town.
Yeah.
So I didn't feel like I was in the middle of nowhere because I had just stayed in Binghamton. But when you go beyond Binghamton, there's nothing going on. I remember driving out to my first interview with my mom, and we were just like, wow, there's nothing out here. And then finally drove into Binghamton and was like, oh, okay, there are stores, there are restaurants.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was definitely a different experience.
Where did you go to school?
I went to Bridgewater State.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
New London-ish type of area?
So it was a good spot because it's halfway between Providence and Boston.
Oh, Bridgewater State's in Mass. Yeah, okay, right.
Mass,
yep,
yeah.
Yep.
So I had a lot. I know there's like a Bridgewater in every state.
I think I was just totally wrong. It's in Mass. Yeah.
Yeah. So I liked the location, and I really, because I was born in Taunton, but I didn't really get to spend a lot of time there. I was 6 when we left, that I kind of wanted to live in the South Coast for a bit. And so that's why I chose that school. And my dad lives in Massachusetts, so I used his address for in-state tuition. So it was nice and cheap.
Smart play.
Yeah. And it was right in the middle of the city. So I got to do a lot of internships, which was really cool for this field.
That's great. And when did you know you wanted to get into broadcast journalism?
I honestly realized it in college. I wish I had a nice story like some people, like growing up wanting to be on the news. I really didn't realize it. Although I think subconsciously I always loved the news, and my mom always had the news on. My dad always listened to NPR, and I loved being the first to know stuff. And it just sort of clicked. My grandmother, I was visiting her in college. I was going to CCRI at the time because I didn't know what I wanted to major in, and I didn't want to waste money at a 4-year. So I just went to CCRI and took those generic classes, and was hoping that something sparked my interest. And then my grandmother was like, we were watching the Today Show one day, and she was like, you love to talk. You love to be the first to know stuff. You can talk to a brick wall, and you love like being on camera and photography and stuff. So you should do this. And I was like, I think you're right. I should. And so I took a journalism class at CCRI, loved it. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to do this. And I transferred to Bridgewater as a sophomore. And then I graduated 3 years later.
You know, I have this vague memory. Does Bridgewater State have like an amazing radio stations, television studio, auditorium, and things like that? Is that?
I wouldn't call it amazing when I was there. They have improved it. I think they have someone from CVB retired from news and is now working there. I forget his name. I'm going to be embarrassed. I don't remember his name, but he is working there, and he has really improved the TV department. But when I was there, it was just one room with a green screen, a couple cameras, but it was really cool because I did learn a lot there, and I got to do a lot of internships because I knew I would be up against people who went to Syracuse and all these great journalism schools. And I was like, I need to get that hands-on experience. So I just did a ton of internships. But the program they had a program, which I'm happy about. So
yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
That is fascinating as well. The notion of the, going up against someone who went to Syracuse or Columbia Journalism School, whatever it may be. I used to worry about that a lot. Now I don't care at all. I know that it impacts me maybe somehow, and I'm sure that you learn more about marketing yourself and having connections to opportunities. But isn't this a field that you learn in the field? Yep. You know what I mean? Isn't it more about like just doing the work, and like education and all that is completely secondary? Or am I just trying to pump us both up right now?
No, I think you're right. And I think that's why I didn't really stress out about where I would transfer to school. Because I did not do very well in high school. I cared more about boys and my friends. And so I did not do well in high school. So I didn't have the grades, frankly, to go to a Syracuse or a better school. And that's why I did the internships, because I was like, the hands-on experience is what matters. And this is how I'm going to really know if I actually like this field and this job, because I originally wanted to be a teacher, and I worked at a daycare, and I was like, nope, do not like this.
Yeah, that's a different angle on life. How did you go? So you're in Binghamton. You're out there. You're covering the city of Binghamton. You're covering the State University of New York at Binghamton, as they love to describe their universities. And you're out in the field, literally with cows and general stores and no man's land. Did a job application appear on some website? Did someone tell you, hey, WLNE is hiring? Or is ABC6 WLNE?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Good thing I didn't blow that as well. It's like, way to prepare here. How did you end up back home, essentially?
So I actually worked at WLNE in college. So I interned at Channel 10, interned at WCVB in Boston, and then my last internship was Channel 6. Mm-hmm. And I had been wanting to do another internship there my senior year, but the news director at the time, Kelly Johnston, was like, hey, we're hiring. Why didn't you come work for us? So I was like, all right, a job in news while I'm still in college, like that's awesome. So I took it. I was an assignment editor, so making the calls and writing web stories and all of that. And I loved it, but I knew that I wanted to be on air. And so I always was upfront, like, I will eventually leave to be on air. And they knew that. And so when I got the job in Binghamton, August after I graduated, I moved out there, but I always wanted to come back home, obviously. And so once I was actually in Binghamton for just 10 months. A lot of people are at their first stations for like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
I lucked out not having a contract. And I felt like I had gotten all I could out of that station, and I wasn't really learning anything anymore. And I was becoming the trainer for these new people, and I was like the person they would come to. And I was just sort of like, I got to move on. Like, I'm not getting anything more out of the station. And so that's when, you have to leave, Yep. And so I really wanted to go back to Rhode Island, but I knew I only had 10 months of experience. So I didn't even apply to 10 or 12. I went right to 6 because they knew me and I worked there and they knew my work ethic and who I was. And they were like, yeah, we have a reporter opening in a couple months. And so I moved right back to 6. It really worked out in my favor.
That's awesome. It's nice to have that, like you said, you worked there, you had already established it. So you're coming into something that was, I don't know, I want to say it was tailor made for you, but it was like the stars aligned sort of for you.
Right. And I obviously didn't feel ready. I feel like no one does when they make a big jump. They don't feel like they're ready for it, sort of. That's how I felt. But at 6, I felt like I had all the resources to get better, because it's like a level playing field there where I don't have to fight with people for top story, and we all get to cover the big things, and I'm not fighting with a senior reporter, like I am the senior reporter. So it's nice to have the options, and that I really have grown a lot over my 2.5 years at 6. If you watch my early stuff, don't watch it. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, I'd love to see the reel from like college to Binghamton, like early 6 stuff, and then bam, where you are now. And I mean, look, you're inside the biggest story of our time right now, of course, with COVID-19, and covering that inside the auditorium at the Vets for these press conferences. You've been there, and I don't know about you, but I feel like it's a tremendous responsibility. It's a tremendous opportunity to be in that room. And for you, I don't know if it just, do you feel like, all right, this is a defining moment in your career covering this story?
Yeah, from the start, I remember, where was it? The Department of Administration was where the first press conferences were.
Yeah, on a Sunday morning, right? It was the first one.
And then they went to the State House, and now we're at the Vets, and I've been there for almost all of them. We do have to switch off because of different reasons. Sometimes I like to do a non-COVID story.
I can imagine, yeah.
Yeah, and they let me, which is really nice. So yeah, I feel a tremendous amount of, I feel honored when I am sitting there. Just being like a voice for our viewers and people, although sometimes I can't scream loud enough to get a word in, but it is cool being there.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me. There's an obvious, if you ever want proof positive of a bias against female reporters, that take a look at that briefing. There's no question about it from my own observations that you are, and others, I think Anita Buffoni has fallen into this, and others who I have seen in that room have been subjected to a mansplaining type of environment that some would say, well, it's not a gender thing, it's just a vocal it's clear to me that there is some sort of disadvantage to be female in that room. And I think it's in part because of a lack of organization in terms of how questions are asked. You've got some people asking, 2, 3 questions, 4 questions, and before it makes its way around. But am I wrong, or am I being overly sensitive to that? I sit there and I sometimes have that, when you're back, you kind of feel like, man, this is not good. Why is Pat Ford still talking? We haven't heard from Amanda.
No, you're right. And I appreciate you being sensitive to that, because some people don't realize. And just was it Alexa from the Globe? We were just chatting about last week. Her and I could barely get a question, and she got hers in at the last minute. But just me as a person, I'm very soft-spoken, which is not a great trait as a reporter. I need to be out there screaming. But I'm pretty soft-spoken, and I don't have that personality that sort of jumps ahead of the line and jumps in front of people. I'm way too empathetic, and so I feel really bad doing that. And so I just wait my turn, and sometimes it doesn't work out for me. But yeah, I guess I just need to sit closer to the mic.
Yeah, maybe that's it. I don't know. I kind of felt that way for a while, and then I felt like the story wasn't being told right. I felt like people were not caring about the main issues at hand, like the areas that the virus was really impacting people, more than anyone. Obviously it impacts everybody, but we weren't really hearing about Central Falls. We weren't really hearing about nursing homes. We weren't really hearing about like why are the parks closed? Things that are impacting daily lives. And then I was like, F this. I will shout over whoever else in the room because those questions aren't being asked. You know what I mean? But for a while, I was there kind of like, do, okay, when's my turn? You know what I mean? And I don't know. I just feel like it's in a weird environment. It's something I think that thing needs to get shaken up somehow, because it's gotten to the point where it's pretty stale. I don't know if people are even really tuning into it anymore, but your voice should be heard, as should Anita's and, anyone else who's in the room. And that mansplaining that takes place there, it's uncomfortable. It's weird, and boring as hell.
Yeah, I sometimes don't even realize it, because it's just something we're so used to in this field, really.
So it goes to other spots in the field. Do you feel like, as a female reporter, broadly speaking, you're at a disadvantage?
I don't really feel like that on a day-to-day basis. No. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I try not to think about that. I've really only noticed it in those press conferences. Yeah, but you have done a really good job at raising red flag on those disparities in those communities. I think that you've been a real leader on that.
Wow, I
And
appreciate
look,
that.
they're getting vaccinated ahead of other people. So good on you for that.
I appreciate it. Yeah, and it's hard to ignore. You know what I mean? I guess it's not for, maybe that's the thing about, like, if you work for a station or a paper or whatever, and your salary is a certain amount and you kind of live in the suburbs and in a bubble, you just don't have that connection. I live in South Providence. You know what I mean? It's like I live in my work studio. So it's like I'm on a daily basis speaking with people that don't look like me necessarily, but have circumstances that are more similar. So,
Yeah.
I'm hearing and seeing this on a regular basis. So I don't know. There's just something about that. Do you get the sense that, from, you know what I mean, that there's people in the room there that shouldn't be there? You don't have to name names, but is it yes or no question?
I think that yes, but I also see the other side where they have viewers and everyone who's there has people taking in their content. And whether I agree with those people's viewpoints or not, I think that they're getting even a little bit of information about vaccines or something that really will change their lives or people around them and make them be safer or just be in the loop on things, I think is good. Because I think no matter what happens in those press briefings, the information is important. And I'm happy that it's getting to people. That's
such a diplomatic and polite answer. And I agree with you. I've thought about it too. Like, I think that there are arguments to be made from ambassadors of the left and ambassadors of the right that have more of an activist bent to their coverage. But at the same time, there are lots of people who that's where they go now. They couldn't care less about Ted Nesi or Brian Crandall or me or you, but they're going to those blogs or radio shows that are all opinion, all, barely any journalism there, but that's where they consume news. So I guess it's a reasonable thing.
As long as they're consuming some facts, I think it's good.
Yeah, it's a recipe for disaster if it's no facts in someone's life. We've seen that for sure. Hey fam, do you want to start your own podcast, or do you have a pod that you'd like to take to the next level? Well, let me help you out. Send me an email, bill@ripodcast.com, or text me 401-524-6825. I'll show you how BTOWN Media has helped other clients reach their podcasting goals, and you may be surprised at just how affordable it is. That's bill@ripodcast.com. What about the performance side of TV? Do you feel like a performer, aside from the journalism, the fact gathering, the information distribution? Like, do you see show business in this stuff?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think I have that advantage, I would say, because I grew up performing. I am a singer in an a cappella group.
Yeah. Hello.
So I've been singing in this group since I was 9 with my mom, and I've made best friends in it. I don't know if you've heard of it, Sweet Adelines.
Yeah.
Barbershop singing.
That's
so
amazing.
I've been doing that since I was little, and I've grew up in the organization. I have won awards with my quartet. I'm in a chorus and a quartet, and so I perform when I'm not working, and so that has sort of spilled into my live shots and being like more captivating for the audience, because you have to have that element to get people to watch. I mean, if you're just standing there like a lump and you're kind of boring, they're gonna change the channel,
Yeah, I totally agree. That's so fascinating. I think you may have told me this in the past at one point, because it rings a bell, or somebody else mentioned that. But
I mean, if you're my friend on social media, you've seen a lot of posts. So
yes, that's it. That's so cool. I mean, I agree with that a lot. And I think it's 50-50 in television and radio. There's a lot of people who are launching podcasts. I fully support it. I think it's awesome. I think there should be the more podcasts, the more information, the more ideas. That's great. But as I listen to them, I go, wow, you're not good at radio. You didn't listen to radio and understand how to do this. So your facts are great, but it's like a class, like a school presentation. You know what I mean? Or like, you need to be able to be a performer. And that's something that I find some people scoff at. But I mean, going back to Brian Crandall, that guy's a great performer. You know, I mean, he's got the chisel look. He's up there. I mean, that guy's working out. I mean, he's up there. He's got that way he delivers the words. He's got the Brian Crandall voice. He knows how to own the mic. He knows when the red light goes on, how to put on a show. He's also outstanding at gathering facts and information and all that business. It's like, it's not one or the other, but I don't know why so many people scoff at that. You know what I mean? It's really, it's like, hello. I mean, people want to be entertained. They want entertaining content. The last thing they need is to just be barked at by somebody who is boring.
Definitely. And I think that, I mean, I was Brian's intern.
Oh, cool.
And when I interned at 10, and I remember being like just starstruck because I grew up watching him. Yep. My mom loves him. My mom watches 6 and then she changes back to 10. Gotcha. But yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that it's really important. I don't know why people scoff at it. I haven't heard that.
It's fascinating to me. I don't know either. Maybe it's more inside baseball that happens, but I don't know. Just to me, this is show business. Fact of them, it's very much like putting on when I perform with my band or anything else. You know, going on WPRO, that is entertainment, man. That, you know, it's news and facts. And you have to have that, but that's entertainment. You know, I don't know. It's just a weird thing that's floating around out there, and I feel like more performers could drift into news media. And when you're in the arts, I'm not saying you're not a corrupted person, but I think your heart, your soul, your third eye, it opens up in a way that is more empathetic, more curious, just more objective. And those are great criteria for someone to be in the media. And I feel like there should be more recruitment of, it's like we've got Kim Kaluni and you and I here now as like coming out of the arts field into Rhode Island media. And I don't know, I think that I'd like to see more people that don't look the same, sound the same, and have the same sort of background that's more studious, you know. Like I like the edge. I like people who've been in the gutter at one point or another in their mind, you know. That's
a good idea. You should start a talent agency.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there it is. My next move. Last couple of minutes here. So ABC, I am absolutely shocked.
It's a tongue twister.
It's a tough tongue twister. ABC 6, Channel 6, ladies and gentlemen. What's next for you? Obviously, I'm assuming you're under contract, and do you see yourself as a lifelong Rhode Island reporter?
I would love to be.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I am under contract. I am at 2.5-ish years. So my anniversary is in July, but due to COVID, that sort of pushed things out. And so, yeah, here until the fall, I hope to stay. I love Rhode Island, and I love telling stories about the community that I care about. Yeah. I know a lot of people like to move to bigger markets, but I think this market is perfectly fine for me.
Yeah, I wonder that too. You know, sometimes because I was in New York for 10 years, I moved away, and I was in Brooklyn and Williamsburg. And so sometimes I think, you know, I'm on LinkedIn, reporter at some random thing you never heard of in New York. And, you know, you're thinking like, man, would I even, let's say that opportunity came and it wasn't a random thing. It was something like a Spotify national podcast based in New York needs a host. Do I apply for that or not? And it's a real tough call. Even in the smaller market here, even struggling financially, because there's just something magical about Southern New England and the ability to tell stories here and randomly bump into Sheldon Whitehouse at a grocery store and be able to go to the State House and Newport in South County and Southeast Mass all in the same day. There's just something magical about that. Yeah, and I think that when it comes to TV markets, the grass isn't always greener. I mean, every station has its issues. I think what matters is the storytelling and the lives that you're impacting with your stories. I mean, you could be reporting in New York City and 3 people listen to it, you know? Yeah. And it's like, but here, the same story would get so many more listeners. And I think that is really what I feel like. I don't know if I'm wrong in this assessment, but this area I feel like just consumes news differently than other areas would.
I mean, we're so like in tune with stuff, and I just love this market. Yeah. And I love how everyone is just so nice. Like I never feel like I'm competing with anyone in the field.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's just big enough where I feel like we could use another print, like another blog type thing, like that was like we could use. It would be nice to have the second talk radio station back, WHJJ. That would be nice. But things are shifting too. You know what I mean? So it's like, but on the TV side, yeah, it's just right where in New York, you know, there are a zillion TV stations. You know, you've got the 3 networks. The Fox is not affiliated, you know, so you've got 4 actually. Then New York One, you've got, which is like a local news station mixed in with a zillion other things, you know. So you'll have like 12, 15 mics in someone's face. Whereas here, yeah, you're probably looking at Steve Clampkin over on WPRO, 6, 10, 12, you know, Steve Alquist, myself, you know, maybe 1 out of 10 times the local NPR people will send somebody, and that's about it. You know what I mean? And that's just enough to like, oh, well, of course, Pro Joe Boston Globe, but that's just enough to tell the story.
Yeah. I've covered stuff in Boston and it's so cutthroat. Like I don't like that. Like I know that that's a part of the industry, but I don't like that because like I always say in the field, like if I get something, I'll tell my competitors like, hey, I'm getting this interview. If you want to come, they do that with me. If we're like on some sort of breaking news, because we're not competitors.
Yeah.
And we're not competing. I'm not getting a raise for having this interview over another station, you know, like our bosses are competing. So I love that environment here where I'm friends with other reporters at other stations and they help me out and I help them out. I love that.
Me too. It's so special. And there's people that, you know, like Steve Clampkin, like that guy, you know, that guy means so much to me. You know what I mean? I consider him a friend, but also like just a mentor and just somebody that, you know, if I have a question about a story, I can call and say, hey, you know, do you think that should I talk to this person or that person, or do you think I should just back away from this or whatever? And we're kind of competing, but not really. It's not, you know what I mean? There's not much of an overlap between someone who's going to, you know, watch a PBS Wednesday night 7 p.m. thing and then be like, well, I got what I needed. I'm not going to listen to the radio on the next day or something, you know?
I love
just
Steve.
Right. Yeah, Steve Clampkin's that guy's Hall of Fame.
I love when he huffs and puffs in the press conference.
Yes, it's man. If we could only have a Clampkin cam just to film him getting irritated with people who are asking long-winded, irrelevant questions. Yeah, that bothers me. It didn't bother me at first, the long-winded, and sometimes look, I listen back to myself and I go, that was a terrible way of asking the question. The intention might have been good, but this big setup, it's like, dude, get out of the way. Like, ask the question. I get it, you know, but there are people in there that, you know, Hummel and I have a game sometimes that we'll play where I'll set certain people when they begin asking their question. I hit start on a stopwatch and we have like an over under. Are we going over 1 minute and 27 seconds today? Or, you know, sometimes it got to 4 minutes one time with one individual asking a question in there.
Wow.
And you're like, geez, like, you know, look, I'm brand new technically. I've only been reporting for like a year and a half. But I would never ask a 4-minute question. So I feel okay. At least I didn't do that.
You could. I think you should this week.
Maybe I will. We'll see what happens. You know, just go on and on and on and on about nonsense. All right. Last question. Rhode Island. What's the best part about Rhode Island from just a general standpoint? Not a news reporter, et cetera standpoint.
Jeez, I don't know. There's so many answers. As a general, not personal.
Well, just for you, like, you know what I mean? Nothing to do with your work, but, you know, when you wake up in the morning and you think about Rhode Island, what is it? Are you a beach person?
I am a beach person. I'm not a water person. I think that humans should be on land. I like being on boats if they're big and safe.
Okay.
No, but I do love the ocean. I just don't go in it. I like to lay on the beach.
That's fair. What's your favorite beach?
The Squamicut.
Oh, wow. Now we're going to have like Amanda Pitt's fan club, like lining up there. Like every day and waiting for you?
I love Misquamicut because there's food right there. I think the food might be my answer.
Yeah.
The food.
There should be more of that. You know, like when you go to other places, there's some guy chopping up a coconut. There's a food stand, roving stuff.
Yeah.
It's very limited here. And it wasn't corrupt or something like the Matunic. I remember Parker Gavigan doing a story on Channel 10 about like how the guy who got the Salties shack at Matunic and a couple of the other beaches, like his whole thing was like a bribe scandal or something. I don't know. So I don't eat there myself. Yeah. You know.
Maybe I won't get a hot dog from him next time.
I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that my answer would be all the food. I mean, I live on Federal Hill, so I can walk and get amazing dishes of Italian food in minutes.
What's your favorite? Angelo's?
My favorite, I might have to say Constantino's.
Oh, wow.
I know. It's kind of a basic answer.
No, that's a great answer.
I love I just love the vibe of it, you know? But I do love Angelo's. I interviewed them for a story, so I have to plug them too. Jamie
Antignano over there. Great stuff. Yeah, Federal Hill's interesting. I always worry about the gentrification of Federal Hill specifically. But that's been evolving. I mean, that's native land. And then there was an Irish movement there. And so it is an evolving thing. So, but finding a way to preserve the old-timey nature of Federal Hill is something we've got to do.
Definitely. I love my apartment. It's high ceilings and like crown molding, and I love it. But I do see that gentrification happening in some places for sure.
Amanda Pitts, ladies and gentlemen, ABC6.
What a note to focus on. Pasta. Yeah, you said it right.
I can't believe it. I've trained my brain here.
How long did it take? 25 minutes?
A little more than that, actually. I think we've been doing this, like 30 minutes, 35 minutes.
Rhode Island's podcast of record, BTOWN.
At HealthSource RI for Employers, we provide access to health insurance to more than 1,100 local businesses and nonprofits, and 96% of them renew through us every year. Maybe it's our choice of 19 different health plans, our 10 years of customizing solutions, or our one local team of dedicated experts helping employers find quality health insurance. See how our numbers stack up for you. Learn more at healthsourceri.com/employers.